Hello and welcome, or welcome back if you've been here before. My name is Ian, and in this video we'll be taking a quick tour of Scarborough Seafront, and I'll tell you a little bit about the history. Not all of it, there's a lot of history in Scarborough, and that would take far too long. If that appeals, do come along and join me. We're starting this ride from Green Howard's Drive, off the Burniston Road that leads out of Scarborough heading north. This is a housing estate that was built on the site of the former barracks of the Yorkshire Regiment and the Green Howards. This video has been repurposed. What I was doing here was actually testing a camera and microphone setup for the DGR earlier this year, but the sound quality was pants. So, rather than waste the footage, I thought I'd do a voiceover and tell you a bit about Scarborough. As we drop down the hill to Peasholm Gap, you can see on the left the Scarborough North Bay Railway, a 20-inch gauge railway that runs 7/8 of a mile or 1.4 kilometres to Scorby Mills and back. Behind that's the open air theatre. To our front and right is Peasholm Park. The park was created in 1911 and laid out to the plans of the borough engineer Harry W. Smith. At various times there are naval battles with miniature manned ships, which plays out in the lake and entertains people complete with bangs and smoke and all sorts of stuff. As we exit the roundabout, we go through Peasholm Gap and we pass on the left hand side the site of the former water park Atlantis, which at one time boasted the largest water slides in Europe. Next to that is the site of the former Corner Cafe. This has now been demolished and turned into flats. We've now entered Scarborough's North Bay. For those who don't know, Scarborough has two bays separated by a headland. North Bay is the quieter of the two bays, with a lot fewer shops and tourist attractions. Once upon a time it wasn't so clear cut. The gardens, which are now a little bit, how should we say, less manicured, were much better kept with bandstands, and there was a pier. Sadly, the only remnants of that is now a rise just past the Freddie Gilroy statue. But the pier was started in September 1886 and extended 300 metres into the bay. It lasted until 1905 when it was destroyed by a storm. The entrance to the pier limped on for another couple of years as a concert venue before it was closed, and when it became derelict that was demolished. As I've said, just before the rise is a statue of Freddie Gilroy and the Belson Stragglers. It depicts Freddie Gilroy in about twice life size. He was a soldier and one of the first British troops into Bergen-Belsen, so it serves as a tribute to Freddie and a memorial for the war and the Holocaust. You can see at the end of the bay the headland, and you will easily be able to see the castle atop of the headland. There have been people in the Scarborough area since at least 1,000 years BC. There was a fortified tower on the castle site in AD 400. It was supposed that the name of the town derives from the period when the Norse settlers arrived. Chief of the Vikings was Scarthy, and Scarborough is supposed to be a contraction of Scarthysborg, or Scarthy's town. Now there is also a suggestion that Scarborough actually derives from Anglo-Saxon and just means the hill with a fort on it. I think Scarthysborg sounds much more exciting. Whichever. What you can see of the castle was started in the 12th century. During the Civil War it was initially a royalist base, but was captured in 1645 by the parliamentary forces. There is a suggestion that the hill on the southern side of Scarborough, which is known as Oliver's Mount, was where Oliver's Cromwell forces put their cannons to fire at the castle. That's a load of balderdash. They'd had never made it. However, after the parliamentary forces had taken it, it was made into a prison. George Fox, the founder of the Religious Society of Friends, also known as the Quakers, was imprisoned there. Scarborough and its castle were shelled by German warships in 1914, and during the attack 17 people were killed and 80 seriously wounded. As we round the headland, you may be surprised to note that most of the road is actually suspended on piers. It was started in 1897, partly as a sea defence works and partly to create the first ever marine carriage drive. It took 11 years to complete and officially opened in 1908. As we go round the corner, we will see the toll house with its arch and tower, at the moment covered in scaffolding because it's being repaired. This is where you paid your toll to use the roads, 1 old penny each in 1908. The toll booths marks the start of South Bay, which, as you can see, is the much more commercial and much more developed side of the town. If you look carefully to the left of the toll booth, you can see another artwork. This one is dedicated to the tunny fishers. Catching the Atlantic bluefin tuna, or tunny, was a big thing, literally. There were a lot of very rich people who came to Scarborough especially to fish for the tunny, and a decent sized specimen could exceed 700 pounds or 320 kilos. The sport declined due to the fishing for mackerel and herring depleting the food of the tunny, and the tunny going off to find more food elsewhere. At the end of South Bay, overlooking the bay, is the marvellous edifice which is the Grand Hotel. This, at its time of opening in 1867, was the largest hotel and the largest brick-built building in Europe. It was built in the shape of a V for Victoria. It was also built on the theme of a year. It has 4 towers, 1 for each of the seasons, 12 floors, 1 for each month, 52 chimneys, 1 for each week, and 365 letting bedrooms. This too was damaged in the 1914 German battleship attack. In 1980, it was also used by the SAS to train for the ending of the Iran embassy siege. A little further on than we're going is the Scarborough Spa complex. This is used for concerts, shows and conferences. And just above the beach, as you go towards the spa, is a little alcove, which is very important. This is where the foul-tasting spring emerges from the cliffs that was the original source of the spa waters. These were supposed to have health-giving powers, although I suspect all they did was keep you regular. But I may be being cynical here. So this is where the rich and famous would come to take the waters, leading to Scarborough being established as Britain's first resort. The spring was discovered in 1660. Once the railways got going, Scarborough ballooned into the massive resort that it is now, with dozens of guest houses and hotels. As we ride under Spa Bridge and head up Ramshill Road, it might be worth thinking of some of the people associated with Scarborough. We've had famous inventors like Sir George Cayley, father of aeronautics. He was born here. Jonathan Fletcher, a name you've probably not heard of. He was the inventor of the first web crawling engine that created tech that was still used now by Google et al. Susan Hill, novelist, she was born here. Penelope Winton, actress. Charles Lawton, actor. Jonathan Greening, footballer. The Little Angels, Toby Jepson, Jim Dickinson, Bruce Dickinson and Mick Plunkett. They're a rock group, they were all from Scarborough. The Bronte sisters were frequent visitors, and Anne Bronte is buried in the graveyard at St Mary's Church. The Sitwell family, Edith, Osbert and Satcherville. They lived at Wood End in the shadow of the Valley Bridge. Their home was donated to the town and is now houses a museum. We've also had some less salubrious people. Jimmy Savile was a frequent visitor to Scarborough and maintained a flat here. He's also buried in the cemetery. Scarborough has also been used as a location of many films and TV shows. Rosie, that was a 1980s-ish sitcom about a young policeman. Heartbeats, The Royal, the film's Little Voice, A Chorus of Disapproval, probably lots of others too. But as you can see, Scarborough's had its place in thespian circles. We also have the Theatre in the Round, which is Alan Ayckbourn's home theatre, and all of his plays are premiered there at the same time that they're premiered in either London or New York. We end today's ride overlooking South Bay, next to the site of the Holbeck Hall Hotel. Now you may remember this was the hotel that fell off the cliff in 1993. We used to joke that it was just Scarborough's customer service ethic. We have the cliff lifts which take people from the town to the seafront, and then when that wasn't enough we took the hotels from the top of the cliff down to the seafront. That didn't get many laughs even when it was new. However, in 1993 the cliff below the Holbeck Hall collapsed and the hotel did descend down into the North Sea. It was rumoured that part of the reason for this was the owners removing a screen of trees to enhance the view. Unfortunately, the trees had been stabilising the bank because there was a spring that ran pretty much underneath the hotel, and that stabilised the cliff, and once the trees were removed it fell down. As I say, this is a rumour. What definitely happened is the hotel fell down. So that's it for our whistle-stop tour around Scarborough Seafront. I do hope you liked the video. If you did, please give it some love with a like. Consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell so that you'll find out when I make some more videos. Thank you again for watching, and bye for now.